We will start shortly here, guys. This is a test. Give me about 1 minute. Okay, guys, welcome to our March Madness betting preview 2019. This is MG. MG covers. Hey, man, March Madness is here. Currently watching one of the play-in games tonight. Hey, it all kicks off tomorrow. Really exciting time for a fan, for also the sports bettor. Everybody loves March Madness, so really excited. Going to give you a lot of good content tonight, and also give you an overview of how I'm going to cover this. First, we're going to talk about bracket tips, how to set your brackets in order to win your pool. A lot of people like that. And then we're going to get into some real unique angles for actually betting on March Madness. So let's get started. All right, first let's talk about bracket tips. Number one, the number one seed has won the NAAC championship the last 14 of 20 years. Okay, now how does that relate to brackets? Well, that means that it's pretty high odds that a number one seed will win the NCAA championship. So out of the four seeds, you have Gonzaga, you have Virginia, you have North Carolina, you have Duke. You need to take one of those seeds and pick one of those seeds to win it all. And again, we're not, if you're wanting to just have fun with your bracket, I mean, that's fine. I'm giving you some really valid tips that would help you win your office pool or whatever it is you're participating in as far as brackets go. So you need to pick a one seed to win the overall NCAA tournament. Now, next, only 3 times since 1979 has a number one seed not made it to the Final Four. So since 79, that's a interesting stat. Heavy chalk there, meaning that, the majority of time you're going to have a number one seed in the Final Four. So another good strategy, you need to have at least two number one seeds in the Final Four, or you could also have 3. My bracket, I have 3 number one seeds in the Final Four, because you don't want to predict all these upsets, and you're just playing probability here. So if you only have number one seed in the Final Four, if that number one seed gets upset early in the brackets, I mean, you have no chance of getting any points in the Final Four. And most of these brackets are set up to where you get more points in the later rounds. So very important to have a minimum of 2 number one seeds in the Final Four bracket, and probably even better strategies to have 3. All right, the classic number 12 beating the 5 seed is a valid trend. Everybody knows about this pretty much in the betting world, or if you're have played brackets in the past, number 12 beating the 5 seed is a valid trend. Now, however, interesting to note, the number 11 seed has beaten the number 4 seed. The record for the 11 beating the 4 seed is 8-4 in the last 2 years. So that's an interesting seeding to look at. And really, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, I've said this before, an interesting trend is that there's more better teams in NCAA basketball than there ever has been in the history of college basketball. The same thing holds true for football. You have all these teams that have football programs. You have kids, like when I was growing up playing basketball years ago, we didn't have AAU. We didn't have any of these other, outlets. You just played in the spring, you played baseball. The fall, you played football. Between those 2 seasons of baseball and football, you played basketball. But now if you're a baseball player, you can play year round. So what that means is we're producing better athletes And of course, these athletes can't go to all one school, so they're dispersed amongst all these college schools. So that there's a lot of good teams, and these upsets are going to happen. We call them upsets, but it's really it's pretty common, like you can see in this stat here with the 11 beating the 4 8 times in the last 2 years. So that's another angle to look at as well. And obviously you want to put some 12, you don't want to have like every one of them, but you want to have, at least one, maybe two 12s beating a 5. Same thing with 11 and 4. You want to play, fairly conservative. You don't want to have all the 12s beating the 5. You don't have all the 11s beating the 4. Maybe 2 of the 12s beating the 5. Maybe 2 of the 11s beating the 4. All right. Moving along, the majority of upsets, and sort of covered this, happen between the number 5, 6, and 7, and 8 seeds. You're not going to see it. I mean, last year, obviously, we saw Virginia get upset in the first round. It's the first time that's happened in the history of the NCAA tournament. But, I mean, it just doesn't happen. So, your 1, 2, and 3 seeds, go ahead and put those 1, 2, and 3 seeds winning this first couple of rounds, or at least the very first round. And the 8 and 9 seeds, sorry about the misspelling there, it says C's. The 8 and number 9 seeds are 50-50. So those are generally toss-up games between the number 8 and the number 9. So you want to have some 8s winning, and you want to have some 9s winning. And finally, this is real important. This kind of lead us into the our betting angles. Pick teams that have a winning road record, and you say, well, it's on a neutral site. That's true, but a neutral site is very representative of an away game, which means the teams have to get on an airplane, they have to travel, they're sleeping in a hotel. And for a lot of these teams, they, especially for the favorite, if the favorite's playing in a neutral site far away from their home, I mean, those fans there are not pulling for the favorite. They're going to be pulling for the underdogs. A lot of ways it will feel like an away game. I remember when big Gamecock fan here, South Carolina beat Duke to advance to the Sweet 16. I mean, it was like a home game for Carolina. I mean, the whole arena was pulling for Carolina to upset Duke. So something to keep in mind there, real important, is to make sure you're picking teams that have a winning road record. All right, next, let's get into the actual betting portion of this video. This is really, really, really good content here. And this is sort of a strategy I use all year in basketball. We're going to talk about good teams against the spread away. And it's just what I talked about previously. You want to wager on teams that have shown they can play well on the road and cover on the road, not just win, but cover. First, I want to look at, I'm just going to kind of explain this chart here. You got Virginia. They're right. Look at that record, 10-1. They are 10-1 against the spread away this year. So they cover 90% of the time. And that MOV right there, that is margin of victory. So in those 11 games, they're averaging winning by 13 points. That's impressive. And then when you see the ATS number, that means that they are winning those games 8 points above the spread. So if the spread was, say, Virginia -8, that means they were winning those games by 16 points, 8 points above the spread number. So these are good teams to wager on in a tournament. Virginia, of course, the number 1 seed. Next, North Carolina, no surprise there, 10-2, 15-point margin of victory, 9 points above the actual spread. Houston. Oh, a minute back up. For one thing I forgot. I want to go back and review. Let's go back up here to Virginia. First round, Virginia is -22 in their first game. And North Carolina is also -22. Let's see. Houston, they are 9-2, cover 81%. Their margin of victory, 14. They blow teams out 9 points above the spread. And Houston opens up at -12 against Georgia State. So when you're kind of looking at this, you go, hey, they're winning by an average margin of 14 and the spread is 12. So it's something to keep in mind there. Ole Miss there, 9-2 against the spread. Really good road team. And Ole Miss, see if I have it here. Yep. They are -1 in their game. For some reason, I don't have listed who they're playing. LSU. Yep. LSU is minus 7.5 against Yale. A lot of people are leaning towards Yale in that game. A lot of turmoil surrounding their coach with LSU. But again, they are a proven away team. Murray State. A lot of people like Murray State this year, playing good basketball. They are 10-3 against the spread away this year, and you're getting points. You're getting 3.5 points. They open up against Marquette, so an interesting angle or a potential play for Murray State. Next, go down to Belmont. I played Belmont last night. They won convincingly. Again, they are +3, and they open up against Maryland. They are 11-4 against the spread. And if you look at it, they're winning at they score a lot of points, shoot a lot of threes. Really good offensive team. Margin of victory, 11 points, and 5 points above the actual spread. Who's next? Wofford. South Carolina team. They are 10-4 against the spread on the road, -2.5 in their opening round against Seton Hall. So they're the favorite, playing Seton Hall. Liberty is 10-4, 71% covering. They are again a really explosive team. 8 points margin of victory average and 5 points above the spread in those games. Liberty again is the dog going up against Mississippi State. They're at +6.5. So again, that's a good angle. You're getting dog money on a really good away team. Next, Syracuse, always good in the tournament. And a lot of if you look through this list, I mean, a lot of this has to do with coaching. All these teams have good coaches, and good. When you see a team that's good on the road, it's a good coach always. Syracuse 7-3, 0.7 margin of victory in those games, just +3.5, +3.9 above the spread in those games. They are -1.5. They're the favorite against Baylor in their opening round. So again, it's an interesting, way to think about it. But again, away teams that are good on the road is really what you want to look at when you're evaluating this. And you might be saying, well, why wouldn't you look at home? Because again, that's a completely different animal altogether. I mean, teams obviously they have a home crowd, play a lot different. So it's just, it's not really a stat that you can bring into play in the actual tournament. All right, conversely, let's look at just the opposite. We're going to look at bad teams against the spread away. Now, we won't have as many in the tournament because obviously, bad teams don't make the NCAA tournament, but still something to look at. Interesting, our first team is Kansas. And this, I bet you didn't know this, and this was shocking to me. Kansas 10-9 against the spread on the road this year. Margin of victory in those games, they've lost by -6, and they've went under the spread 6 points. And Kansas actually opens as a favorite against Northeastern. And Northeastern's a good team, man. Kansas -6.5 in that game. Next, should have hit the highlight button. Sorry about that. Cincinnati 3-8. They've had so many close games, even the games they win. I've played them several times this year, sometimes for them, sometimes against them. They're 3-8 against the spread on the road, 1.2 margin of victory in those games. And you look against the spread, -2.9. And they, again, open as a favorite against Iowa. Cincinnati -3.5. And then let's scroll down here. Northern Kentucky, 4-10 against the spread, margin of victory 3, and 0.1 above the spread in those games. And Northern Kentucky opens up as a dog +13.5 against Texas Tech. Texas Tech, really good defensive team, so that'll be a really good game. And then finally, Auburn. This is really surprising too. Whoops, I skipped one. I'll go down to Auburn. We'll come back up to Iowa. Auburn 3-7, -2.5 margin of victory, and -5 points below the spread in those games. So Auburn, you would think, hey, a pretty good road team, but actually year-to-date season, actually not. Slide back up. We'll look at Iowa, 3-7 against the spread away, -6 margin of victory, and -2. -2.5 below the spread. And I just mentioned this earlier. Iowa is playing Cincinnati in the opening round. Iowa's a dog at +3.5. So again, a really interesting way to, if you're just like looking for a simple way to handicap games, this is a very effective strategy. It works year in, year out. against the spread away in the NCAA tournament. All right, now I'm going to show you something that might surprise you. What would you guess while you're watching this video? What would you guess the number one seed, what their win-loss record is against the spread since the for the entire NCAA tournament since it started? Believe it or not, the number one seeds are 27-25 against the spread in the first round. And you might think, well, man, that's not very good. You would think it would be higher, right? You would think they would cover it like maybe like 60, 70%. But here's why. They're always going against a, quote, 16 seed. And of course, they're the number one seed. So I've talked about this before. The odds maker sets lines based on perception. So all these number one seeds are going to get heavy action. So the odds makers know this. So in order to get action in the other way, they give these they inflate the line, which a lot of people, the actual betting term is called shade the line. So they'll make them even more favorites where a team should be, say, maybe a 12-point favorite. They'll make them like a 17-point favorite to hope and get direction, to get money in the other direction on the dog. And when you look at this first game, check Gonzaga. They've always been like huge favorites this whole year. They're going up against Fairleigh Dickinson. And you look, I mean, they're a good team, 9-1 in their last 10. They covered 8 of those, 8-2 against the spread in the last 10. I mean, granted, they haven't played a team like Gonzaga all year, but it is hard to be a good team by 27.5 points. I mean, it is hard. That's hard. So an interesting angle would be, maybe going in the opposite direction of Gonzaga. And then you look at the other number one seed, Virginia. Same thing here. Gardner-Webb. Again, Gardner-Webb is a good team, South Carolina team. They're 8-2 in their last 10, 8-2 against the spread. Virginia -22. And looking at my notes, one thing to note too, when you realize these teams, obviously Gonzaga is going to win this game. Obviously Virginia, well, I'll say that for Virginia lost last year, but start to put yourself in the mindset of the players and the coaches. They know they're going to beat these teams, but they also, their goal is not to just win in the first round. These teams are thinking, hey, we need to get to the Elite Eight. We need to make it to the Final Four. They're thinking championship. So they have to sort of conserve in a way. Like if you get a team that's up by, say, maybe 20, 15, 20 points, 2 minutes to go, they might put the reserves in. And then the opposing team just starts, bombing threes. And it could happen. And then, have a backdoor cover with some of these other teams. So, that's, as a coach, you got to realize, coaches, players care nothing about the spread. So have to remember that when you're handicapping these games. And then finally, they hadn't released the line yet for Duke. I'm sure they have since I started this video, but you have Iona facing UNC again, -23. And look, again, Iona is 10-0 in the last 10, 8-2 against the spread. So I'm gonna tell you this, at least one of these teams is at least one of these dogs will cover, maybe two, maybe all three, but at least one of them will cover. I'm promising you. So it's a interesting angle to look at evaluating. So hopefully that information was helpful to you. I'll move it over to our next slide. If you say, hey, I don't want to have to deal with making our own picks, we have a March Madness package. Dogs and Aces, my partner, we are selling our entire March Madness tournament package, $75. You can pick the capper of your choice. You can obviously pick me. I've started off the March Madness. I'm 3-0, including the 2 wins tonight. These guys, they've actually done had incredible seasons, much better than I have during the regular season. Jimmy, Dogs and Aces, 81-48, 27 units year to date. That's incredible. $100 player will be up 2,700. Dime player will be up 27,000. Redbeard, you see him doing a lot of videos over at Dogs and Aces, 172. He's 100 wins, 72 losses for 24 units. Both of those guys have an outstanding season. So when you buy the package, it's not designated. You have to pick either. You can pick me. You can, we'll send you an email confirmation. You can say, hey, I want MG's picks, or you can say, I want Jimmy's picks, or I want Redbeard's picks. So again, Jimmy, 81-48, up 27 units. If you want his card, you'll get all his plays. Redbeard, he's 100, lost 72, up 24 units. Or if you can get, you can see my full record on my Instagram. Actually already started off 3-0, and they're not just going to be NCAA picks. We'll also have some NIT, maybe some CIT games in there as well. So Hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. There is a link in the description box to purchase the March Madness tournament. Again, make sure you tell us which handicapper you'd like picks from. And as always, like and subscribe. Greatly appreciate all my followers. Those of you that have subscribed and got comments back, telling me some, giving me some feedback on the videos. I love doing these videos. I love pumping out the content. So, hey guys, March Madness starts tomorrow. If you purchase a package, if you don't, hey man, good luck. It's an exciting time, and we will talk to you guys later. Have a great night.